Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Oh, we have news. There is news. This is a not Monday, Wednesday, Friday edition of the show. It's called a bonus episode because it is an extra episode. And it is some pretty big news. And it's something that we're going to try to approach here with a little bit of nuance, with a little bit of, I don't know what exactly. We're going to try to approach this story with the facts, and only the facts, and then try to make an assessment from there. And in fairness, there are going to be things discussed on today's bonus episode that might be troubling for some. And so, listen, if you found your way to this video and you could see the name of it, chances are you are very well aware of the Hockey Canada trial. You are very likely aware of the content of that. If you are not, I would suggest maybe you go look it up first. We're not going to dive into all of the awful details and all the accusations that came out in this trial. But we are here because it is news that in theory can affect somebody in the NHL. The news has broken this morning that Carter Hart, along with 4 other players that were named in a trial with Hockey Canada, have all been acquitted. And there is a lengthy thread of tweets that we will probably go through from those who are currently in London, Ontario, covering the trial. But it is quite simply something we have to talk about because, in fairness, we have been monitoring the situation. And I did a video about Carter Hart, I think it was back in the fall, about when he wanted to relocate from Alberta to Tennessee and that it had been kind of denied by the U.S., his re-entry into the country and what that all means and why he'd want to relocate and all those things. You can go back and find that if you want. And that video was kind of done from the perspective of this is a guy who has serious allegations against him. I said the word charges in that video. It was allegations, but you get the point. He's been acquitted. 4 other players have been acquitted. What that ultimately is going to mean, I don't know. Now, there are still things kind of rolling along, but the judge in the case has come out and said that she doesn't think that the Crown has done a sufficient job of meeting the requisite requirements to continue, or at least to charge any of the players. And so I'm going to go out to a running thread because as soon as I put out a tweet about like this is happening or whatever, there are some people on Twitter who are like, well, I don't totally understand. Like, what does this mean? How do you know he's being acquitted? Well, because the judge has already kind of gone in on it. Now, there are a lot of moving parts to this trial. There have been a lot of nasty allegations that have come out, some really disturbing things. And again, if you feel so moved to go after it and to chase down all the details of the trial, you certainly can. But I'm going to go out to somebody who's been covering the trial, somebody who's like continuing to provide the updates. But there has been, I'm going to go out to, I think Rick Westhead had a bunch of the most recent details. But the judge apparently has said there's not enough to convict. There's not enough here to continue. So let me see if I can pull the most recent thing. She apparently has gone out and said to the jury that, or to the assembled public, that there will not be, I guess, further charges. So the biggest thing is that the judge has claimed that the accuser, EM, was found not credible and that her testimony was viewed as not credible. Now, what you make of that is up to you. There have been things that have kind of been outlined along the way about it not being, some evidence potentially not being admissible. There was the mistrial early in the proceedings where the jury was thrown out. Then you had the judge ultimately was going to be the one who was going to make the decision. It was no longer going to go to a jury. It's an interesting story. Let's go out to the comments here really quickly, and then we're going to kind of dive into some of the details while I try to pull up the most recent news. And now, in fairness, however you feel about it, you can certainly express in the comments. I've now dropped the comments down below. I'm going to keep the comments here as long as it remains let's call it, as long as it remains respectful. Like, you can have a feeling of however you want. If you think this is a good thing and you're like, hey, this is justice, cool. If you want to say that this is horrible and the Canadian justice system, failed an accuser, all that, you can have that. But don't get nasty with each other in the comments or have to shut off the comments, which would be kind of a shame. And we never have to do that on the show. So Ryan Cummings says, it took us 2 years to get what everyone already knew. Not saying what happened wasn't wrong, but there were two parties who essentially subscribed to a possible outcome. Well, there was going to be one of two ways this was going to go. There were either going to be charges, they were either going to be found guilty, or they were going to be acquitted. And it appears as though there is an acquittal incoming. Now, again, the judge, I believe, is partway through the actual ruling, but has effectively found that the accuser's testimony just was not credible. We'll get back to that in a little bit. And we have to talk about whether or not there's a path here to Carter Hart ending up back in the NHL, which is kind of where we're going to pivot to in a little bit. But I think that there's a pretty high likelihood that he's going to end up back in the NHL. And I would expect that it could be as early as this season. We're going to get there in a little bit. Okay. Let's see. Chris Fried says it would be negligence for the Flyers to not re-sign Hart at this point. Some other NHL team will. Hart is better than any goalie the Flyers have in their organization currently. Again, this is a very tricky kind of spot to be in. I'm actually going to pull up, here we go, the Globe and Mail, I think, is the one that kind of had the running verdict. We're going to throw over here really quick, and then we'll get back into the hockey of it all. I was waiting for Globe and Mail to kind of have a synopsis up because I saw a Twitter thread, and I want to make sure that we're kind of going to one of the more reliable outlets. So here you go. Hockey Canada verdict. The judge has recounted each player's testimony, apparently found Carter Hart's testimony to be very credible and believable. He was the only player to take the stand, which was interesting. Also recounted the lawyer's closing statements. The judge referred to trial testimony about the night in question, claims that the accuser EM appeared to be sober. McLeod's Russian team says he'd be welcome back if found not guilty. The judge says she did not find the complainant's evidence credible or reliable. That's where we're at right now. And there's this idea of the proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That seems to be the thing that is kind of driving to this idea that the acquittal is forthcoming. It depends on the outlet that you look at, just how decisive they are in their headlines and what they're saying. New York Times is running something about how the judge doesn't find the accuser's evidence to be credible or reliable. All of this means that if you haven't met the onus of proof by the Crown, you're effectively acquitted, unless something is really going to change here, which it does not appear to be. All right, now let's get back over to the comments, and we will kind of juggle back and forth because people are going to feel two ways on it, right? Like, there are going to be some that are going to I guarantee, so Chris Fried had this comment here, it'd be negligence for the Flyers not to re-sign Hart at this point. There are going to be a lot of people, a lot of Flyers fans, who are going to say, bring the guy back. He's automatically an upgrade over Sam Ersson. He is an upgrade over Dan Vladar, who you had. He certainly better than Alexei Kolosov, better than Ivan Fedotov, who the Flyers had last year and remain in the organization. There are going to be people, specifically, it's felt like for a couple of months at least, Oilers fans have kind of flirted with this idea of it'd be interesting to bring Carter Hart in. Stuart Skinner didn't get the job done. Can he be the one to get it done? I've seen Carolina fans on X today having the same conversation about, could he be an upgrade for them in goal? There are going to be teams that are going to be interested, assuming this acquittal goes through, assuming that everything goes down the way that it appears it very well is going to. I expect him back in the league. Now, I don't know if he'll be ready for training camp. I don't know if he'll be ready for the start of the season, but I fully expect that as long as the acquittal goes through, he will be back in the league as soon as this year. Now, there are other implications to that, and there are certainly a lot of questions that you can have. We'll get there in a little bit. Ryan Cummings over on YouTube says, can probably get him on a discount too. Well, he's not going to get a big money deal if he's back in the league, especially coming off of this. You're not getting your quote-unquote fair market value based off of the last time you played a game, especially with this kind of looming over your head. JH is here, says hi. Hi, JH. Zacho says, Hart to Edmonton, McKenna to Pittsburgh, and the Flyers staying out of the playoffs. It would be something. Ford, not even a hockey fan, but is here. Says, in fairness, I shouldn't be here, but I am. Let's see. Maurizio Chieri says, to be clear, the judge has yet to give her verdict. She's halfway through, has already said that the Crown didn't meet the onus of proof. I don't know exactly what else there is to get to, but it certainly feels like we are trending in the direction of a full acquittal. If I'm wrong, I'll make an amendment here to this video, but as of right now, everything seems to be going in the direction of a full acquittal. Jay Grebby says, do you think based on the extent the judge is ruling not guilty, Hart will get another shot in the NHL? And if so, would the Flyers, I think that is to be continued, would the Flyers bring him back? I don't know. People that I've talked to around the team in the past have not given the indication that they would be totally open to the idea of bringing Carter Hart back to Philadelphia. I have a legitimate question about whether or not the player even has interest in coming back here. Again, all of this is kind of like developing in real time, right? Like there is a very large part of this that remains, part of it is like remains to be seen. What's ultimately going to happen here, right? But I'm looking to see what the most recent update is because there's somebody who's in the courtroom kind of following it. Judge has been explaining to be able to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the defendants who were charged individually and not technically as co-accused each had to both act as reus and mens reus in committing the alleged offense. So they're still going through this final verdict. The judge ripped into the credibility and reliability of the complainant's testimony, noting the inconsistencies between the witness testimony and evidence are clearly problematic in terms of the Crown's ability to prove guilt beyond all reasonable doubt. Wild. Okay, so let's get to the hockey of it all, I guess, and we can kind of juggle between this and the comments. Amadeo says, Flyers aren't bringing Hart back, people. Peter Tom Willis says, I'm curious about the potential of the other players. Hart's a no-go. I have to imagine that Hart will be back in the league. I don't know if any of the other guys will be. I think only one really had any kind of a profile in the NHL. I would say that just based on the level, like if you want to try to remove all of this from it and you're just going the context of like if these guys are NHL caliber players, I think Hart's probably the only one who gets back into the NHL. At least immediately. Maybe one other one is able to resume his career in like a year or two. I wouldn't be very bullish on the idea that like any of them are back in the league right now. Reed DeFort says, out of contract, no way he comes back to the Flyers, even if the Flyers wanted him back. Not JD says, bring him back. Slander shouldn't ruin someone's career. Let's see. Kevin says, why are you doing this? How many people have to tell you the Flyers are not bringing him back before you believe it? Why are you on air? Why the fuck are you here, Kevin? I guess that's the question. Like, I'm here because this is still news. It is news that is in some way tangentially affiliated with the Flyers. And why? Because he played his entire NHL career here. There are still a large group of fans in Philadelphia who would like to see him back. There is a large contingent of Flyers fans who would not like to see him back. It is still news. It is still a developing story. That's why we're here. We knew that the verdict was going to be read on Thursday. We've known this all along. So we are just simply reacting and trying to figure out, like, is there a path? You know, for as many people as I've talked to that have kind of said, like, this is a no-go, I have to imagine that there are some people within the Flyers organization who look at it and say, oh, an acquittal is a kind of different thing now. And do you try to see if there's a way to mend fences? Is there a way to have him work with community groups? Although if he's acquitted and not found guilty, I don't know who you're going to have him work with. And like the simplest comparison here also feels dehumanizing. So like it's tough to make the comparison, but I guess the one that you could look at, right? And again, this is not meant to compare the severity and the legality and everything else that came with it. The last time Philadelphia had an athlete that was in this high profile of a case, the guy didn't even play in Philadelphia at the time. But it was like when Mike Vick went down for the dogfighting ring as an Atlanta Falcon, the Eagles eventually decided after he'd served his time that they were going to allow him to like rehabilitate his career in Philadelphia. And remember, that was met with a ton of backlash and a ton of skepticism. And that was a guy who was found guilty. And that was a guy who ultimately was given that second chance and able to kind of resume his career with Philadelphia. And there were still people who were like lifelong Eagles fans who did not want to continue being fans as long as Vic was on the team. That's a different situation. This is the difference between being found guilty and being acquitted, and it's acts against animals versus an alleged act against a human. So again, can't really compare it, but from the idea of like a high-profile case and the fact that like there are going to be people who are going to feel very passionately on both sides of this argument about whether or not you bring a player back, keep in mind, that's what we're talking about in Philadelphia. There are going to be other fan bases that are going to be having the exact same conversation. I mentioned Edmonton because if you remember back when free agency kicked off, Kevin Weeks went over onto TSN, and one of the names that he kind of threw out there as being somebody that could be on the Oilers' radar was Carter Hart, assuming he got acquitted. That was a big thing that was going on. Now, I just have a really hard time imagining that Philadelphia is the place that he would go to. Again, this was a very tricky place because when everything was coming out, and we have to believe that the Flyers knew going into the accusations being made public and the trial possibility coming up, that they were at least somewhat aware that this was going to come to a head and that eventually he was going to be away from the team and have to go through a potential trial, and that's what happened. I have to imagine that there are going to be people within the organization who are going to try to make hockey sense of it and say, like, all right, it could make sense. I think the backlash and the fact that Comcast Corporate owns the team is probably going to be enough to say, like, absolutely not. Even if the player were interested in a reunion, I have to imagine that Comcast Corporate looks at this and says, like, even if you're found not guilty, there is no way you want to go near this with a 10-foot pole. Would he have an easier time trying to regain the trust, I guess, of a fan base that he had been well liked by? Maybe. Is that easier than trying to go to a new market with this cloud overhead? Now, again, even with an acquittal, it's still a terrible allegation. We'll give him credit for this no matter how you feel. He's the only player to take the stand, which felt like a bold choice at the time. And it sounds like the judge found his testimony credible. So, okay. Is there a way to try to do a PR spin to this if you're a new team that wants to like bring him in? Maybe. I just don't know. Like, to me, if we're kind of playing the where could Carter Hart end up playing game, I don't know how he plays in Canada because you are so unbelievably easily recognizable in Canada. Everybody in Canada is very well familiar with this case. They're familiar with the player. The idea of him just kind of being able to fade into the background seems highly unlikely. When I did the video back in the fall, and I was like, why would he want to relocate to Nashville? It's like, well, Nashville is a highly populated town. Yes, there are passionate hockey fans, but like if you're in Nashville, which is a very big touristy kind of city, people who are coming into town aren't going to know who you are. I mean, you could pretty much fly under the radar. And in fairness, like in a lot of even bigger market cities, hockey's not the number one sport in a U.S. city. So while you might be noticed and you might be somebody that hockey fans are going to be able to pick out of a lineup, are going to be able to like pick out if you're at a bar or you're at a restaurant and go, oh, isn't that guy? I just can't imagine he's going to end up in Canada. So then you start to look at teams that are stateside and you go, all right, well, would a Carolina make sense? Like maybe. And Carolina's also a situation where like the media market's not nearly as big. Hockey fans are certainly there and they're certainly passionate, but like you can kind of exist there and be relatively left alone. That could maybe make sense. Could he go to a team like Pittsburgh? I just saw Jim Cochran kind of make the joke, Pens will sign him and he'll win 2 Vezinas and 4 Cups. Could he do well in Pittsburgh? Yeah, in theory he could. It's a big enough city. You can live out in a rural part of Western PA and be left alone and have a successful career, and maybe you try to build up with a team that's going to rebuild, and like maybe that's the way to go. I'm just not sure. And again, so much of this comes back to the PR of it all. Like so much of this comes back to the optics. If you bring a player back who has been part of a trial like this, and again, if he's acquitted, like let's play this thing out to the fullest, okay? If this goes the way that we expect it to, if it goes the full acquittal route, which is the way that everything is heading, because the judge technically hasn't done the full ruling yet, and it might not come until later this afternoon. But we're going off of the idea that like she said that the alleged victim in all of this, the accuser, has been found to be like not credible, and that she appeared sober. And like if we're saying that isn't credible enough, and that the Crown hasn't met the burden of proof, I don't know what other assumption you can make. So if this goes the full acquittal route, this is where teams start having to have that conversation, that PR spin to this. Do I think the Flyers are going to be involved? No, I don't. Could Carter Hart be interested in coming back to Philadelphia? Maybe. I guess we can kind of go back to when all of this went down. And I mentioned earlier, like, you have to assume the Flyers had an indication that this was out there and that it was going to eventually come down. He was going to have to leave the team for a bit. They didn't burn him on the way out. Like, they didn't say, what a disgusting human being. These accusations are heinous and we don't want anything to do with this guy regardless of outcome. They didn't do that. That also would have been pretty insane if they had. Like, it opens them up to a ton of potential legal action down the line, especially if he gets acquitted. So they didn't do that. They also didn't like come out with a super flowery statement about, we've stood behind, Carter Hart. He's been a great person in the community. He's been great with this. He's been working with these groups, and, he's always been kind and charitable with his time. And they didn't go with like a flowery statement. It was just kind of like a fade off into the distance, kind of fade away, where he kind of put out that I think he was the one that said mental health, like he was taking care of his mental health in stepping away, and then the accusations came out. And I don't think the Flyers ever really like truly addressed it in a way that you'd say, oh, this was like overly supportive or this was overly critical. It's just kind of felt like all along they played it like right down the middle. Would the player want to come back? Does the player feel like the team should have been more supportive in his or in their wording around his leaving the team? I don't know. I just find it really hard to believe he's going to end up back in Philadelphia. I don't see a path. Now, things could change. If I'm right that Comcast corporate's like, absolutely not, is there a path to potentially like using all of your cachet, if you're the Flyers, who are technically owned by Spectacor, which is a wing of Comcast? Like, do you have a way? Is there a path here to say like, look, we think that like there's a business case to be made and that he's going to make this team better, and there's going to be a way to like smooth this over the public? Like, I don't know. If you're working in PR for the Flyers or for any NHL team, you're probably kind of crossing your fingers that like this isn't going to come across your desk. You're kind of hoping probably that like your team is just happy with what they have, and you're not going to wade into these waters. Even with a full acquittal, there are still going to be questions around the player and around the team's decision to bring him back, if that's what ultimately happens. Let me go back over to the comments here, and we'll kind of work our way through all this, because I think a lot of it's going to be similar, but I just want to be fair here. Yukon says that he loves Carter, says false accusers need to be held accountable. I think it's also really hard here, like, as people say, like, libel and slander and false accusations. I don't want to wade into like some of the waters of these charges themselves. Is there a possible middle ground? Is there a possible middle ground that the accuser was intoxicated and made these accusations the next day and felt regret and then lobbied these accusations? It's entirely possible. Is it possible that, look, anything can happen, right? Could an accuser make something up and all of it is just fictitious and it's all nonsense? I guess. I like to live in a world where like people don't do that. I would assume that it does happen from time to time. I don't know what to make of it. I don't have it in my heart of hearts to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to say that everything is fake news. Everything was false. There could be kernels of truth by the accuser and kernels of truth by the accused, and maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle of it all. I have no idea. I just don't know from a PR perspective why you would want to go down this road if you're the Flyers, if you're the Hurricanes, if you're the Oilers, if you're another team. Zach Anderson over on YouTube with a super chat. Thanks, Zach. Says corporations can justify any action assuming you can make a financial case. Well, the financial case here, right, if you're the Flyers or if you're any team that needs actual help with goaltending, is that, like, in theory, Hart was a good goalie. Now, I would always kind of go back to this idea, and you can go back to like old episodes of Snow the Goalie going back many, many years. I was not the biggest Carter Hart fan on the ice. I thought that a lot of people overrated his abilities. And there was a season that specifically I was like, well, the home road splits are like truly troubling. And like he's a significantly better netminder on one side than the other. Now, the last time he played was 2022 or 23-24. He went 12-9-0 that season, or 12-9-3 that season. He had a 2.8 goals against average, a 906 save percentage for the season. If we go back over the course of his entire career, he has a goals against of 2.94 and a save percentage of 906. Does that make you want to move heaven and earth? Does that make you want to take on the potential headache of this situation and of this cloud that's looming overhead? Like, I'm not sure it is. If this is a guy who had like a 950 save percentage and was going to fundamentally alter the trajectory of your team, all right, maybe you have that conversation. But like as it stands right now, let's see, he has an August birthday, so he's about to turn, is that 27? Yeah, he's about to turn 27. So he still has, if you're going to go the hockey argument here, probably has 3, 4, maybe 5 really good years left. But the problem is he hasn't played since 2024. And so the idea of like trying to get back into hockey shape, like maybe he's been training this whole time. I'd have to assume that he is, right? Especially if he believed in his heart of hearts that he was innocent and that he wanted to pursue a career in the NHL again, which it does seem like he probably has wanted to. You're going to try to stay in as good of hockey shape as you can, but what does that look like? What exactly does hockey shape mean? We all know that like there's the idea of being well conditioned, the idea that like you can remain in hockey shape as best you can, but unless you're playing in games and you're playing against the top competitors in the league, it's kind of hard to see you staying in the mindset of a true NHL netminder. You're not facing live action, live shots. Like, I don't exactly know how you're supposed to stay in hockey shape. He might be as close to it as you can be. He knows what to expect. He knows what it's like to play in this league, but like, again, kind of hard when, what was his, let me just take a look here really quick on what his last game was. It was it January? Yeah, January 20th, 2024. So you're looking at a player who hasn't played since, not this past January, but a full calendar year ago. You're looking at like a year and a half. And if he's like to get himself back into some form of hockey shape, you're going to be looking at almost 2 years from the time he played his last game until he would play for a new team or for the Flyers again. Now remember, he does not have a contract currently. The Flyers did not tender an offer. They did not send him a qualifying offer or anything when his contract elapsed. They just let it lapse, and that was it. He technically is a free agent, can sign with any team in the league, any team that wants to sign him. So if anybody's like out there wondering like, oh, are they going to try to work out a trade? The answer is no. They don't have his rights. They couldn't bring him in and trade him away for assets even if they wanted to. I'm going to go back over really quickly to the comments because I see a bunch of people continuing to comment, so we're going to try to be as fair as we can here. Maurizio Cherry says, it would be unfair if the Flyers wouldn't have first option on signing Hart. They were forced by the league to terminate his contract due to the obvious, but if he's not guilty, the league should make it fair. That's also not true. The league did not force the team to terminate his contract. They did not extend him. There was no like gun to the Flyers' head that said you're going to terminate his deal right now. They let the deal lapse and they did not extend him. They did not go into negotiations about a contract. I don't know where that came from. Maurizio, by all means, you can drop it in the comments. We can have a conversation. They did not terminate his contract. They let it expire. They let it lapse. Now, I do believe that there was some kind of edict from the league that like these players are going to be allowed to hit free agency if their contracts run out. Fine. And then I would assume that no matter what happens, there's going to probably have to be some sort of an appeal process of getting back into the league because this was a high-profile case. Now, if you were acquitted, I guess that's another question. Like, if you're fully acquitted, do you then have the ability to just resume your NHL career, negotiate with the team, and sign? Or is this going to be viewed kind of like what happened with Quenneville or with – did Babcock – I forget. I think Babcock had to go through some kind of an appeal process to get back into the league. Will you have to do that if you're one of these players, even if you are acquitted? Like, do you have to go through it, or does the league say, all right, well, an acquittal's an acquittal. You're free to negotiate. I don't know. We'll find out. Let's see. Holy crap, there are a lot of comments here. Okay. By the way, you can find this on the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel. If you're on the Joy Media YouTube channel, if you're on Facebook, if you're on X and you want to comment through X, you have to click the video first, go into the old Periscope mode, and then you can join the conversation there. Of course, if you're on the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel, you'll see a lot of these comments. If you're in the Joy Media one, you can certainly comment there. I can bring it up on the screen and I can see it and everything, and it'll pop up down here. But you might not be engaged in a conversation with as many people. Now, what I do want to do really quickly is I'm going to throw a poll up over on the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel, because I think it's interesting, and like I'm seeing a lot of like contradicting opinions, which is totally fine, and again, fully expected. But I do want to know from people, ultimately, if you were the Flyers, would you bring Carter Hart back? Because it does seem like we have a difference of opinion in the comments, and I find it interesting. So that's going to be the question. Would you bring back Carter Hart? Now, if you're here from another fan base and you're, I don't know, like an Oilers fan, a Hurricanes fan, a Kraken fan, whatever, you could certainly vote in that, and you can go with the idea of like, I would bring him to my team, or I would not bring him to my team. You could just apply it. Now, because we're a Philadelphia-based show, we're going more with the Flyers angle here, but I do want to know what your thoughts are. So we'll let that poll go up, and in a not surprising turn of events right now, I see right now it's like a 2-to-1 split. We're somewhere around like a 2-to-1 split between yes and no. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit surprised. I thought that the no was going to be like immediately higher. So I find it interesting. And I'm not like asking for people to like, provide your work. It's not like an old math test where it's like, solve the problem and make sure your work is eligible or is legible in the margin or whatever. But do me a favor, drop in the comments your rationale. Like, if you think that the Flyers should bring Carter Hart back, let me know why. If you think absolutely not, let me know why, and I'll try to get to as many as I can. Chris S. over on YouTube says, what kind of shape is he in? Has he been training to your knowledge? So we go back months, right? We go back, when did I drop that other video? I had it pulled up earlier. It was back, 10 months ago. So last September, I did a video about Carter Hart and wanting to relocate from Alberta to Tennessee, specifically like to the Nashville area. And at that time, the idea was out there that he wanted to relocate to Nashville because there were players that he wanted to be around to kind of keep himself in shape. I fully expect that he has been doing whatever he can to remain in shape. But again, like I said earlier, kind of hard to compare playing in the NHL and training with an NHL team versus trying to do it on your own. I would expect that no matter what, he's been trying to stay in some kind of shape because he knew that this kind of day could ultimately come. And again, if he knew in his heart of hearts that he was going to be acquitted, of course you're going to try to stay in shape because you want to have the eligibility and the ability right away to go out to teams and make yourself marketable. King Alfred's U.S. descendant says, I'm not going to pronounce Hart's guilt or innocence. However, could the NHL face a lawsuit of Hart and the other players if they're blackballed without a guilty verdict? That's where I think the league is going to run into a legitimate issue. And this, again, is why I know Maurizio before was like, oh, they forced the Flyers to terminate his contract, which they didn't. The reason that they didn't, here you go, so Maurizio did come back. League wouldn't allow the Flyers to qualify the player. The reason for that is because they wanted to see how the case was going to play out. And in fairness, I don't think the Flyers would have extended an offer to him even if they were allowed. Now, if you want to get into the semantics of were they allowed to, were they not allowed to qualify him, whatever, I don't think the Flyers were going to go down that route knowing that this was happening. So, back to King Alfred's question. Yeah, if the players are blackballed after being acquitted, there's probably going to be a lawsuit. Now, could Carter Hart, who was under NHL contract, could he ultimately choose to sue the league? Maybe. Now, if he was blackballed this entire time, like say the Flyers or another team wanted to negotiate with Carter Hart and for some reason sign him to a contract, which again, I don't think any team would have wanted to do with all of this uncertainty floating around. If a team wanted to sign him to a 5-year contract with a cap hit of $900K and the league said, no, you can't do that. All right, well then fine. I guess in theory, a player could sue the league and say, how dare you prevent me from being able to sign with the team that wanted to sign me? I don't know how that would hold up. could Carter Hart look to sue the league for lost wages over this past, are we at like almost 18 months, 19 months? I don't know. I don't exactly know how you're able to like get that done. Here's where it would have been interesting. If Hart had been under contract through like 2027 and we're set to make millions of dollars and the league did tell the Flyers you have to terminate the contract, can't get paid, then he probably would have had grounds to sue the league for lost wages. And then it would have created a whole other level to this of like, all right, well, there's a contract to offer. Now what? I guess for the Flyers, the good news there is that there was no contract to continue to either terminate or not. Amadeo says, anyone who's willing to sign any of these players will face extreme backlash. I get it, and I get the idea. I think that this is why I've been saying, I think it's going to be a real test in a team's stomach for this from a PR perspective. And I hate to reduce this conversation to the PR of it all, but that's kind of where this is going to pivot to. If the judge found the accuser to be like non-credible and that the evidence didn't meet the burden of proof, now it does kind of become like a PR spin moment, right? Like now all of a sudden, every PR team in the NHL that has a, mediocre at best goaltending situation is going to have to figure out, all right, well, if the team signs him, now what? Zacho says, I just don't think the Flyers want to be associated with Hart anymore after this. I would say that there might be people within the Flyers who could find a path to bringing Carter Hart back. There might even be part of Carter Hart that would want to come back to the Flyers. I think ultimately Comcast Corporate is the one that says, we do not want to do this. I would think that there's a higher likelihood that the big public company of Comcast, this massive, massive company, says, we do not want this no matter what. And again, I know there was a comment before that like big businesses figure out ways to kind of rationalize things all the time. This isn't a guy who has like a 945 save percentage, a guy who's like the one piece that's missing to take you to a Stanley Cup, or maybe you try to make a business case. But like again, Comcast Spectacor is one part of the Comcast corporate business. They're like, I don't know what the percentage is, like in terms of like where Spectacor is relative to all of Comcast, but like they're not the ones driving the majority of the revenue here. So like it's not even like you have a family owns the team and it's just that family and now they have to make the morality decision. Again, not to compare the cases, but I think I did an okay job before of doing this in a humane way. But like Jeffrey Lurie ultimately had to decide, do I want to bring Michael Vick in? There wasn't some gigantic corporate entity that Jeffrey Lurie was reporting to where it wasn't even his decision to make, right? There's not a direct parallel here to say, well, if Dan Hilferty and Keith Jones and Danny Briere want to sign him, they can just sign him. There's still like the giant Comcast. Brian Roberts ultimately from Comcast would have to make that determination. And again, from a legal perspective, I just don't know if there's a path here that makes sense for Comcast, let alone the Flyers. Let's see. Joe Fisher says, was waiting to tell the trial was over to say anything, but would like to know how much game shape he'll be in. No one knows. JH says, Ersson was out playing Hart near the end, and if they bring him back, I'm canceling my season tickets, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I've made this observation before. I thought that it was interesting to see as many Carter Hart jerseys as I did this past season at the carnival, like kids in their Carter Hart jerseys. I found that surprising. There are still a lot of people who are going to be happy to have him back. And if JH gives up their tickets, somebody else is probably going to pick them up. We'll see. Ryan A. says, after the Provorov thing, and how it made the Flyers look publicly, I can't see them bringing back Hart. Probably Hilferty's decision, but damn, I want him back. I think that's supposed to be like the LGBTQ thing, and the fact that Provorov wouldn't put the rainbow stick on his, or the rainbow tape on his stick, and he wouldn't wear the Pride Night jersey in warm-ups, and how that went over. That alone probably tells you that the Flyers wouldn't bring him back. Let's see. Chris Freed says, I don't want to know about the personal lives of athletes or entertainers or podcasters. If I knew many of these folks personally, I would likely not follow them at all, but not guilty is not guilty. And Max Flaws or Flows over on YouTube agrees, says bring him back. I'm going to go with this. So let me go back to this one. Oh, yeah, you're right. If you knew everything about your favorite athletes, you probably wouldn't follow some of them. You probably wouldn't agree with them from a morality perspective. That doesn't mean committing crimes, but like there are some very good people in sports, and I'm sure there are probably some really nasty and bad and morally corrupt people in sports. Same thing as entertainment and pretty much every walk of life. We've all. Can I make a statement in absolutes here, which I don't typically like to do? I think it's probably safe to say that we've all met at least one person in our life that we say, wow, that person is a tremendous human being. I don't know how they do it. And we've probably met, even maybe more likely have met somebody that you're like, that is a scumbag of a human being. I do not like them or ever want to be around them again. I feel so disgusting after being with them. I need to take a proverbial shower. The duality of man. We experience this kind of stuff. It could be at work, could have been at school, it could have been in a group that you're with, it could be people that you like to spend time around, it could be neighbors, it could be anybody. You're going to meet good people and bad people in life. If you knew every nuance of every single human being, chances are, yeah, people you feel very good about, you might not feel great about. Remember, like this is the tricky thing about fame in the case of a player. Players do a really good job for the most part of trying to project to you what they want you to see. Politicians do the same thing, right? Like they try to give you an image that you are supposed to believe is that person at all times. And then sometimes you find out that these people have actually been horrible human beings the entire time. And you go, wow, I didn't see that coming. There are other people who project a pretty good image, pretty positive image, and you go, see, I knew all along the person was good, but they actually suck. Like they might actually be a terrible human being behind the scenes, but you just don't know. You're going off of what you've seen publicly and what's been made available to you. So I think it's really tricky. Timpo717 says, Russ, 2-week over-under on Hart signing with the Oilers. What you got? I would say that of all the teams that I could think of that might make sense as a Carter Hart destination, I think Edmonton makes a lot of sense. The one exception to that rule is what I said before, that like, if you go play in Edmonton, everyone's going to know you. You can't just walk down the street and not be noticed. Like, in fairness, if Carter Hart or any of the Flyers right now were walking down, I don't know, like we're walking up the art museum steps, we're walking around City Hall, went into Reading Terminal Market. If you saw a lot of these guys, even like pretty avid Flyers fans a year ago might not have been able to pick out Ryan Poehling if he was walking around Reading Terminal Market, right? There's a chance that like if Travis Konechny is wearing a baseball cap and walking around Reading Terminal Market, you might not be able to pick him out right away. Now, Travis Sanheim's a big dude. Rasmus Ristolainen, massive dude. Probably stands out a little bit more. I just have a hard time imagining that Hart would want to go play for a Canadian team knowing that, like, you can't be under the radar. You can't really be left in peace after all of this because people are going to know who you are. I think it's more likely that he either goes to a rural U.S. opportunity, which Carolina kind of fits into, or he goes to, like, a bigger city where you just kind of get lost in the mix. So, like, a Nashville could theoretically make sense from that perspective. And we'll get into some other potential landing spots. I don't know. I guess I would take the over. I don't think a team's going to sign him immediately. This is also possible that, like, he's not going to be signed until the new year because you're waiting to see what your goaltending options ultimately look like in the first half of a season or so. And then maybe an injury happens and you bring him in. Remember, like, I don't think he's going to get a big contract wherever he signs. King Alfred's U.S. Descendant says, after the Flyers essentially cut Hart loose when his contract expired, would he want to return? I don't know. I've heard some conflicting stuff on it. I don't know why he would. Ryan Schiffler asks, say they do get him back. Which goalie goes? Ersson? Well, it's a good question. I guess it would have to be. You just signed Vladar. Ersson could probably get you something back asset-wise. I don't know if that puts you in a really great position, But would you take Hart over Ersson right now? It all comes down to like conditioning, I guess. It all comes down to like how quickly can he get back into hockey shape, back into NHL shape. But again, it's not like something that I think they're going to have to decide. I would say Ersson's probably the one that would go at that point, but man, what a mess. Can you imagine? Like, here's the other thing. If this had happened a month ago, like imagine if this trial verdict had come down before free agency. Does that change the Flyers' entire mental makeup of what the trade deadline or what the free agent start is supposed to look like? Does this change the calculus on any of the other teams who went and signed goalies this offseason? I don't know. Maybe it would have, but it's happening now. Chris Freed asks, does the NHL have the ability to suspend players for off-the-field conduct like the NFL? Yeah, what we do know, it was, wasn't it? Hold on, let me just double check this one. The one that I'm thinking of is when Mitch Miller was signed by Boston. This is back in November of 2022. Boston tried to sign Mitch Miller, and there were some allegations against him as well. And the league was going to have Miller go through some kind of an appeal process to like be able to become an NHL eligible player. And then ultimately, Boston chose not to go through with the signing. I think the league could try to do the same thing here, but it's going to be hard with an acquittal. If they'd been found guilty and then served whatever kind of time or paid whatever fine or what, I don't know, in fairness, what would have happened if they'd been found guilty and like what that would have looked like in terms of like what the punishment would have been. But if you're acquitted, like I don't know how you can force these guys to have to appeal to re-enter the league. So I don't know how they could suspend him, even if they wanted to. Let's see. CMAC here says, so we can't re-sign Carter Hart, who's been acquitted, yet the owners of Comcast that probably voted for Trump, who's in the Epstein files, and 14 cell phone numbers. I don't know what the 14 cell phone numbers are, but I don't know. Boy, it's going to be kind of hard to, I think, draw a direct parallel here between Carter Hart and the Epstein files. But sure, I don't know. Let's see. Joe Fisher says the NHL was the one who put the 5 players out of the league when the news started coming out. Again, I think it was just you have to let their contracts lapse. Let's see. Ryan Cummings says it would be wrong of NHL to do what MLB did to Trevor Bauer. The case was over the second the defense proved that infidelity, shame of parents brought on a case of bad decisions by both parties. The Bauer thing is also kind of wild and interesting, and we've kind of talked about it at different times on this show. And ultimately, those charges were dropped. That case was dropped. Trevor Bauer has effectively been blackballed by Major League Baseball. Can't really envision a scenario where he's ever back in. Maybe it's a fair comparison. I'm not sure. Timpo says, right or wrong, or somewhere in between, I think the ship has sailed between both sides, Flyers and Carter Hart, about reuniting. Let's see. Let's see. Matt Triken, I think it's Triken, says, do we know if he's been practicing working out on the ice since the trial has started? Yeah. It's had to have worked out. It's just a matter of like what's the caliber of player that he's been working out with. That we don't know. Ryan Cummings says, also think it would be a good opportunity for the NHL to give teams that held the rights the option to sign them or send them to free agency, basically RFA status for a 2-week period or something. I guess that would be interesting. Like if you're the Flyers, you could have given them a qualifying offer. Should they be allowed like an exclusive negotiating window? Maybe. Where that would actually be more interesting. All right, so let's try to play this one out. So if the idea is that the Flyers could have given a qualifying offer to Carter Hart, and they were effectively told by the league, you cannot do that, do not do that. If that is true, and if that were proven to be true, I could probably make a case that the Flyers should be given an exclusive RFA window. If they don't want to sign him, they theoretically should be able to then have the rights to trade his negotiating rights for a limited period of time. I could actually get behind that logic. If the Flyers were specifically told in no uncertain terms, you may not give him a qualifying offer, they should then probably be given that option. I know to some that might feel gross, but it is probably true. The Flyers were not the ones who were part of this trial. The Flyers did not have accusations against them. So why are you punishing the entity, the team, the Flyers, for this trial? Okay, we can maybe make a case that that's a fair thing to the organization. And if they ultimately say, like, we don't want him back, maybe they should be able to trade his negotiating rights like an RFA. Maybe that's fair. John M. says, if the Flyers don't re-sign him, can they take back our Hart jerseys for an exchange? I think that when this first went down, there was a program that you could have gotten your jersey renumbered or the nameplate changed, or both. It won't happen now. Peter Tom Willis says, I hate playing the fanboy, but I'm amped you did a pod. Well, thank you, Peter. Thank you for being here. Let's see. Philly fan says, the league should have put the players on a commissioner exempt list and allowed the Flyers to have retained his rights as a restricted free agent. If I were the Flyers, that's what I'd be doing right now. That would be the conversation. If I'm allowed to kind of progress the conversation along, this is probably what the Flyers should do, no matter what. No matter what their interest is in bringing him back or not, they should be playing this card. They should 100% be bringing up the fact that they would have had a similar option had they been able to offer a qualifying offer. Let's see. John M. says he'll be signed by someone, no doubt. I agree. Let's see. Ryan A. says, this screams Vegas. Perfect town. Won't get backlash. Only one goalie signed in Aiden Hill. Schmidt is an AHL goalie and a Stanley Cup contender. That could be interesting. I mean, there's a place where Carter Hart probably won't, like, he could absolutely fly under the radar. Really good opportunity. Question is, like, here's the one part of it that I guess also kind of feels weird to talk about, but is also sort of fair to talk about. Should Carter Hart assume that he would be viewed as a starting caliber goalie in the NHL if he hasn't played in nearly 2 years? I don't know. I don't know how you would come back and be like, oh no, I definitely deserve to be a starter from day one. Now, I'm just taking a look here really quick at, like, who had the worst goaltending in the league? The Flyers, of course. Last year, Flyers had a 3.45 goals against average. Good God. No, sorry. Yes. An .879 save percentage. The second worst team in the league was San Jose at .887. That would maybe be interesting. They actually had a worse goals against at 3.78. Holy shit. Buffalo. Would he go to Buffalo? Would you want to go to Buffalo? I wouldn't want to go to Buffalo. Pittsburgh could be a faster rebuild, potentially, especially if the league rigs the draft lottery for Gavin McKenna to the Penguins. Boston, 892 save percentage. Nashville, same thing, 892. Carolina at 893. Carolina would be interesting insofar as, like, they're always in the mix in the playoffs. You'd view them as a potential cup contender. Do you want to go rebuild with Chicago? I'm not so sure that you do. Vancouver, again, I'm going to rule out Canadian teams for now, except for maybe Edmonton. Detroit, 896. Montreal, 896. I don't see that being a fit. Columbus, 896. Seattle. Could Carter Hart being in the Pacific Northwest of the U.S. make sense? Yeah, okay. Like, maybe you can make a case for Seattle. And then you get to Edmonton, who had the 19th worst, or no, not 19th worst. They were 19th in the league in save percentage. Anywhere beyond that, you start to kind of ask questions. So, I don't know. All right, let's see. Reed DeFord says his options will be the two teams in Alberta, which would be Edmonton or Calgary, or a team in a state with no income tax. I don't know about that. He's not going to go to Dallas, right? He's not going to go to Tampa or to Florida. I guess the Vegas of it all could maybe be interesting. I don't know. Kevin says, Bjarnason or Zavragan? I'm waiting on them. Hart is gone. So how do I, like, transition to this at least briefly? So Bjarnason's an interesting dude, and I don't necessarily know that he's like ready to make that jump right now. They signed Vladar because they don't think they have anybody else in-house who can be a better backup goalie. Bjarnason could be somebody worth keeping an eye on, I guess, down the line. Zavragin is certainly the most interesting goalie they have in the pipeline right now, just by virtue of how he performed at such a young age in the KHL. Let's see. Joe Fisher makes the joke, Hart's going to replace Bobrovsky. Stop. Tony Louie here with this will be considered a very sensationalist take. We'll honor the take here. People are going to say things on both sides of this. Says that he'll just say it. The whole trial was ridiculous from the beginning. Evidence showed everything that was done was consensual. Canada's justice system is a mess. It ruined these guys' lives. Can I play a counterpoint to this, though? This situation, regardless of like what is found, who's acquitted, who's found guilty, all that, there are just situations I can't fundamentally ever envision myself wanting to be in. Now, I know I'm different. We're all different. But even in a consensual situation, the idea of like what was alleged in this law, you would never find me in a situation like that. And I cannot fathom what would drive anybody to want to be in a situation like that. I just don't get it. It seems so foreign to me that like, I don't know, you can have those like wrong place, wrong time sorts of arguments, but man, like this whole situation, no matter what, I just don't get it. I don't understand. Let's see. Ryan A doesn't think Nashville is an option. Amadeo says Comcast also took away everything to do with Kate Smith. They won't let the Flyers bring back Hart. I've actually heard some rumblings that there's a non-zero chance that Kate Smith is back this year if the Flyers make the playoffs. I would actually be willing to maybe throw down money right now if there were odds available that if the Flyers make the playoffs this year, that God Bless America comes back for the playoffs. Do I have that on great authority? No. Do I have that on like somewhat decent authority? Maybe. Are they going to bring the statue back? Probably not. But could I envision a scenario where God Bless America is back in the playoffs if they're back this year? Yeah, I could. Let's see. Oh, here you go. Ryan A says Seattle's also a sneaky spot. Played in Everett, Washington in junior. They're always trying to get rid of Grubauer. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Philly fan says this was clear. With no jury, the prosecution had nothing that a judge could find guilty verdicts. We'll see. Zach Anderson says, I doubt Hart comes back to Philly as much as we need a goalie. They have so many goalies. It's funny. The Flyers right now have so many goalies in the organization, but none of them are particularly good. And the ones that are viewed as being potentially good are still like a ways away. Again, like could Bjarnason like do enough this year that you go, okay, non-zero chance he's with the team next season. Yeah, I could see a path to that. Zavragin, if he has another sensational year in the KHL, you're probably going to start having a conversation about, wouldn't it be interesting if the player and the team somehow negotiated together, but definitely not with the Flyers. They definitely, had a conversation between the player and the team, and they decided, we're going to terminate the contract early. Okay, interesting. I don't imagine you're going to see Alexei Kolosov in a Flyers jersey again. I find it kind of hard to believe you're going to see Fedotov playing with the Flyers unless there's an injury. Given what happened with Ersson last year with groin injuries, it's entirely possible that anybody could end up in net for the Flyers this year. Let's see. Tony Louis says Anaheim, Columbus, and Seattle would be good fits for Hart. Small markets that nobody pays attention to. Yeah, if you want to go with the idea of small market or a team that might not be as hockey passionate or whatever, I could get behind those. 4@M_top. I don't know. That almost is like you had a seizure or you fell asleep on the keyboard with that name. No offense. And if there's a great meaning to it, by all means, let me know what the meaning of it is, because I interested in finding out. But the question here is, was he the only player that was in the NHL? No, it was Michael McLeod and Cal Foote both played for the Devils. And I'm trying to remember. Dylan Dubé played for the Flames. I think he was still playing with the Flames at the time. So 4 of the 5 were playing in the league. Phightin, I think, was the only one who was playing abroad at the time. So I think there were 4 of them that were still playing in the league at the time. 4 of the 5. Let's see. Casual War Zone guy says that if Hart or any of these other players were acquitted, there should be no PR backlash. There will be no matter what. What you think is just and what's fair and all versus like what ultimately happens, I think are probably going to be 2 very different things. Let's see. All right, so we're getting an update here. A lot of inconsistencies that the judge has been running through in the Crown's evidence. In addressing the inconsistencies, Karachi notes differences in statements made between EM's testimony, her interview with London police, and in various I think that's supposed to be places, of video evidence presented at trial. Going through the players and other witness testimony, it's extraordinarily consistent. This stands in stark contrast to the testimony provided by EM, which Karachi has already called unreliable and inconsistent in this morning's opening remarks. One of the Crown's prosecutors has begun typing on her laptop furiously. Her colleague remains sitting still, staring ahead. She's been virtually motionless since this morning. This is all being documented by somebody named Amazing Zoltan. Now, I was a little bit skeptical about, how much do we put into this, but this seems to be a blow-by-blow of what's going on in the courtroom, so we're going to kind of roll with it for now. Let me see. Chris Freed asks, where are Ant and Bundy for their thoughts? We're doing a Snow the Goalie tonight. Surprise. We're doing a Snow the Goalie tonight. We're supposed to have a Flyers prospect on. We're also going to release one of the Dev Camp interviews this week, so you can kind of keep an eye out for that. We'll find out how Ant and Bundy feel about discussing this topic, especially because we're going to have a player on the show today, I believe live as well. So, yeah. Okay. Jim Cochran says, understanding the burden of proof for these types of crimes is often way too high for convictions, and the legal system is not perfect. It is the system we use. Dave Wallace says, the libs would protest every day if he was rightfully brought back, so they won't do it. I'm not sure that would be the reason that the Flyers ultimately wouldn't bring him back, but we'll find out. Colin Moy says, given the politics of the city of Philly, I don't think the Flyers will entertain. I would assume the team that signs Hart is going to let the politics of the area decide. I'm not sure. So, you have to be careful here, because just because the city of Philadelphia is a liberal city, right, as a lot of cities are, that doesn't mean that the entire fan base is inherently a liberal fan base. Like, again, the name Kate Smith has been brought up here, but like the backlash about Kate Smith being removed was not from the liberal city of Philadelphia. It was from a very passionate group that I'm pretty sure are not liberal who were trying to keep Kate Smith affiliated with the team in some way. I would guess that if we did like a political affiliation breakdown of Flyers fans, there's a good chance that there's a little bit more red than blue. So I don't think that's exactly it. Let's see. AJ is here, says, whoa, WTF. Let's see. We're being careful with some of the comments because I'm seeing some stuff that I don't want to bring up. Yeah, we got to be careful with some of this. This is good. This is a good one from Amy. All young hockey players need to take a lesson from this. Even if this was not illegal, it was atrocious behavior. This is where I come back to. I just can't imagine being in that situation or being in a situation like that. And in fairness, like my closest friends, like I can't imagine them being in that kind of situation, which then makes me say like, sometimes you just have to have do a better job of discerning what's right from wrong and situations you should be in versus not. Now, in fairness, there was some testimony from the trial that makes it sound like it's weird. There was something that was coming out from this like ongoing thread that some of the players made it sound like the only reason they were in that room was because there was this idea that there was food in that room, and then they got there and like, what the hell is this? Okay, we'll find out. I'm just looking to see any other updates from the core. All right, we're going to come back over to this. Casual Warzone guy says Hockey Canada should take more flack for allowing these teenagers to drink and party. They promoted it for them. I think you could certainly make a case here that Hockey Canada was negligent. I think there's probably something fair in that. And by the way, if this is like proven to be the culture of Hockey Canada at the time, you would certainly hope it's not the culture of Hockey Canada now. But if you combine this with like what Amy said before, if you're a player and there's like a high profile nature to what you do, I would hope that this is a learning experience for anybody. I'd hope it goes outside of just players, but we'll find out. Amy says, there are a few women in this chat. I was looking for some self-reflection from them. They so far have shown none. Joe Fisher, back to the hockey of it all, says, I think Hart would be an upgrade over Ersson, and I can see why people want him back. Yeah, if you can look at the situation in a vacuum, does Hart represent an upgrade at the very least over Dan Vladar? Yeah. Is he an upgrade over Sam Ersson? When he's at, his best? Sure. But again, like I've never really been of the belief that Carter Hart was like a top 5 or top 10 goalie in the league. I think he was good for the Flyers, but the Flyers were never really particularly great at developing goalies. Timpo here with a thought, and I know that there were people who felt like this after his testimony came out, says, here's the thing, even if Hart is acquitted of the charge or the accusation, in his own testimony, he showed that his behavior was questionable at best, to put it lightly. I hope he gets a second chance, but not here. Again, this is where I go, like, I can't imagine being in this situation. I don't understand it. Philly fan says, Ersson, Vladar, Vidotov, move heaven and earth and Mars. Don't move the planets out of orbit. That would be horrific. Let's see. This is an interesting question from Tony. Couldn't the Flyers try to recuperate the year and a half left on his contract that was still remaining at the time of the case? Couldn't they claim they should have his rights? That's the thing that I keep coming back to. If I were the Flyers right now, this I think would be the line of questioning I would have for the league. All right, we couldn't extend him a qualifying offer. We would have had the ability to negotiate with him. We were not allowed that right, presumably. Got to get something out of it now. Adam Vaccaro says he is not coming back unless something was talked about between Philly and Hart in the background of it all. We all know what will happen, though. Haunts us for the next 8 years, wherever else he lands. Yeah, I'm not positive. I mean, could it haunt you? Sure. I don't know. It's possible. Peter Tom Willis says to Amy, I agree with you. They were running around like hooligans. Hooligans. That's a good word. Let's see. Kevin goes, everyone defending him for the team being trash in front of him hasn't realized Nick Seeler is our number 4 defenseman to start the season. Hold on, let's see. All right, so play this out. Sanheim, Drysdale, York, Emil Andre. Yeah, I mean, if first line's going to miss the start of the season, boy, is Seeler going to be your number 4? Oh boy. Oh boy. M at 4 or M4 at M_top says Maple Leaf should get him. That one is one that I would immediately rule out. There is no freaking chance on earth that I can imagine that Hart would want to go to a team where the light is absolutely the brightest, and he certainly would not be able to walk anywhere without people swarming him, which would be Toronto. Zacho says rehab year in the AHL, back in the NHL in a year I could see it. I can't imagine he goes to the AHL. I guess the question is it more likely to go to the AHL or go to the KHL? Like, could he go look to play a year abroad? I don't know how you'd want to, though. Like, all right, in fairness, if no NHL teams come to him with an offer, assuming he's acquitted, if nobody comes to him with a contract offer between now and the midpoint of this upcoming season, all right, well, then maybe you do have to look at your choices abroad. You would assume that playing in the KHL is better than not playing at all. But woof. Let's see. Oh, and Andy just said, this is how I found out about Hulk, because there are people in the comments. Hulk Hogan also died today. So, that's a guy with a very complicated history as well. So, yeah. Hulk Hogan died. So if you didn't know that, now you know. Let's see. Mike Crawshaw says, surely the Oilers will be in the mix. Yeah, I expect the Oilers to absolutely be in the mix, but we'll see. This reminds me now. I forgot to stop the poll. So we're going to stop the poll now over on the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel. 128 people voted. And the final tally on the question, would you bring back Carter Hart? 65% said yes, 34% no. 128 people voting is not a bad number for being live. I think we're at 127 people on the Russ Joy Show channel right now, 17 over on Joy Media. We've crossed the 1,300 number over on X. Poor Facebook. Nobody on Facebook right now. That's okay. Hey, do me a favor while we're still doing this. Hit the like button. Because if there are 100, now we're at 150 or so across 2 YouTube channels, plus all the people on Twitter. If you're on YouTube right now, hit the like button. That's helpful. You want to help the channel, like the video. You can share the video. I always tell people you could share the video with a friend, family member, an ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend, whoever. Somebody that isn't even going to reply to you, that's fine too. Just helps the channel. If you want to subscribe, we'd love to have you. Channel continues to grow. We talk about Philly sports. We talk about the Flyers. We talk about the Eagles, the Sixers, the Phillies. Sometimes the Union, who, by the way, there's a horrible rumor about the Union maybe selling off their top striker. We'll maybe talk about that on Friday's show. But we talk about Philly sports. We talk about national sports. We talk about the media, all of it. So this is a place we try to have fun. Today's a little bit more serious than normal. Actually, a lot more serious than normal, but hit the subscribe button. It's always helpful and greatly appreciated. Okay, we're going to keep going. Let's see. Ryan A says, still think the Oilers are going to ride with Skinner and Pickard. I'm not sure if they will. If you're trying to make a case here to keep Connor McDavid, I feel like you have to do something at goal. Like you have to do something in net. I don't know if this is the something, but I feel like you do have to do something. Dave Wallace says, if he wanted to come back here, the team doesn't have the balls to bring him back, would be protests and interruptions every start in the city. Let me play devil's advocate to this notion. If the Flyers were to bring Carter Hart back, would there be distractions at least initially? 1,000%. Like, without question, there would most certainly be a wide array, a big number of people protesting. You know what would change it? If he'd come back in and play well. And if the Flyers took that really difficult October stretch and they were over 500, a lot of people would stop booing. This is sports. Sports can be fickle. Let's see. Zilla092 says, hey, Russ. Hey, all. Hope y'all are well. Hello, Zilla. Hope you're well as well. Let's see. And also says, no to Hart back. Casual Warzone guy says, will they bring him back? No. Should they? Yes, he's better than all goalies in their system for NHL and AHL. Let's see. Pat X over on YouTube says, acquitted doesn't mean innocent. Read the police report and the text messages. I don't want that scumbag, says Pat. Again, I think a lot of people are going to make that decision. I think a lot of people who saw the testimony, who saw what came out around the case, are going to just feel against the potential signing. And again, it's going to happen here or it's going to happen somewhere else, but I fully expect it's going to happen. JH says he was an average goalie, not nearly worth the PR nightmare. I think that's ultimately where the Flyers and a lot of teams are going to come down. He had, what did I say, a 906 save percentage his final season in the league, or 906 save percentage his entire career. And in 2023-24, his last season in the league, he had a 906 save percentage, which is in line with his career average, and a 2.8 goals against, which, in fairness, was his lowest since he played half a season in 1920. Played 43 games that season. That was the COVID-shortened year. I don't know. I don't think it's worth the headache. I could be wrong. Let's go back over here. I'm going to try to skip ahead a little bit because there are so many comments here. I've been seeing them going nonstop. John M. says, I feel like one of the reasons he will not return is due to Philly media. He knows what will come his way. I will tell you this, without naming names, because I do feel like that would be unfair. This conversation was had not that long ago, where I talked to a few other media people from Flyers land, and the topic of Carter Hart came up. I would say that there is a good number of people who would not have the anti-Hart agenda. Could there be a couple of people who would be like, not thrilled to have to cover the guy again? Yeah. I'd say for the most part, like you have a decent number of the media people who are covering the team now either weren't here long enough when he was playing here to have had a relationship or to have like interactions with him either way. And I think that there's still like a decent number of people who would just say like, whatever, like my job is to cover the team. So I don't think you would have like manufactured outrage. I could see some columnists at the Philadelphia Inquirer certainly writing some skewering takes if the Flyers were to bring him back, but we'll see. Peter Tom Willis says, after going through the trial, I'm sure he wants a completely fresh start. You were correct with him hiding in a big-ish American city. I think that's what's going to happen. Andrew Fawcett with a good point says the NHLPA is too strong. The players will be reinstated. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it is what it is. This is also not true. Dave Wallace says, anyone saying he was an average goalie does not know puck, and he was the legit number one and a top goalie in the league where it's not even debatable. That's not true. He was not a legit number one. I'm sorry. Is he a number one? Like, is he potentially the best goalie for a team in the league? Sure. Is he a top 10 guy? No. At his peak powers, was he a top 10 goalie? No. He didn't have he did not have a great team playing in front of him by any stretch. He didn't even have a very good team in front of him. But like, his numbers are not awe-inspiring. He was maybe developing into the best version of himself on the ice, but I was never enthralled with him as a player. He was not like some bona fide stud that was going to like win Vezinas and lead you to cups with the Flyers. I just don't think so. Casual Warzone says he was legitimately good on a dog shit Flyers team, but the Flyers still need more pieces. They need to remain bad, and I don't want another Luchenko when a Demidov is there. Well, I mean, in fairness, like Demidov was off the board, but I get your point. So Jim Cochran has an interesting point here, but this is the thing that I was kind of alluding to earlier in the show, saying I think his efforts off the ice with abused women's organizations and his efforts to raise awareness might make the difference for teams. That is a very tricky thing if you are a team and you decide this is like part of the idea of signing him. If he was acquitted, I don't know how well received that would be to then be like, hey, he was acquitted of this assault charge. Let's have him work with like women's groups and women's organizations. And like, I don't think this would happen. I don't actually know that this would be the good optics that you think it might be. If he had been found guilty and then served time and then came back and did that, I guess that would maybe make more sense. Again, not to compare, but we've had this high-profile lawsuit comparison with a Philly athlete, although he wasn't a Philly athlete at the time. Like Mike Vick was found guilty while playing for Atlanta, then came to the Eagles, and then did work with, like animal rights groups and stuff like that. But he had been found guilty. I don't think that would happen. Let's see. Kevin says Zavragan. Andrew Fawcett says, I say this with all sincerity. If he's brought back to the team, I'm done. There are going to be people who are going to feel like that. And I'm sure that there are going to be fans of other teams if he ends up with another team that's going to feel a very similar way. Let's see. We're going to keep going. I'm also checking that updated thing to see if this is if anything is going on. The judge went over some of the messages from the group chat between the players, found the messages that were sent after the players found out Hockey Canada was opening investigation. Text message in the group demonstrate a commitment to truthfulness and no evidence of collusion or conspiracy. Quote, tell the truth. Quote, don't make things up. Quote, we didn't do anything wrong. Quote, we got consent. Another thing I don't want to read here, but same idea. Also, the judge also notes that while EM was in trial, EM said she engaged in the acts that form the basis of the charges out of, quote, terror and, quote, fear. However, the judge also notes this is not what the complainant told the London police in 2018, offering another inconsistency. I know that when I started the show today, people were like, well, he's not acquitted yet. I'm not sure that this is going to be different. Let's see. Timpo says, everybody loves a comeback, a redemption story. I can almost guarantee the Flyers would at least have internal conversations about bringing it back. I would guess that this entire time, right, from the moment they became aware that there was going to be that there were going to be charges brought against Hart and these 4 other players, and from the moment they knew that was possible to the moment that he stepped away from the team to the charges coming down to him having to be part of this entire proceeding, they've probably had a ton of conversations about it. What do we do? What are our options? Probably talk to the league. What options did the league give them? Will that ultimately result in them bringing the player back? Colin Moy says, I'd bring Hart back because no goalie project has worked since he left. Bit of a sign. I saw people saying it was like a curse, but I don't know. Let's see. Stanley Krapinski over on YouTube, like the video, share the video, subscribe, says, I thought Philly was a second chance city. We'll see. Let's see. Casual Warzone guy says, the thing is, his numbers were legitimately good considering the horrible team in front of him, so the numbers shouldn't be a knock against him, but I'm on the Fedotov-Kolosov train wreck to help the tank. Well, there you go. Dave Wallace, I guess, responding to somebody who said about getting rid of their tickets, said, I'll take your tickets. How dare they sign an innocent goalie? Let's see. Let me keep going here. Let's see. We're pretty far behind on the... Oh, boy. Some of these comments were from 40 minutes ago. How many freaking comments came in? Goodness gracious. Timpo said, hey, Russ, did you hear about Hulk Hogan? NWO for life. All right, let me see if there's anybody else that we haven't heard from so far. Spencer Turnbull. Thanks for being here, Spencer. I still support you, Spencer Turnbull. Phillies did you dirty by choosing Taijuan Walker over you last year. Says, sign Carter Hart and sign Spencer Turnbull. Okay. Gooey H says, if Carter Hart comes back and is just pretty good, not great, it isn't going to be worth it to Comcast. Maybe if he was a Hasek or Brodeur, but that isn't at all likely, especially with the time off. I agree. That's why it's like, if he had elite numbers, maybe it's a different conversation, but... Amadeus says, Stan Bowman coming off the Blackhawks scandal might not do it. That's also fair. Let's see. Pat X says, anyone willing to bring Hart back and spending time watching this crap is a quarter hockey-only dork. Read the police report and go through text messages. Get a life. Okay. Interesting. Pat X has been here for a while, but okay. I'm trying to understand that, but all right. Landros says, I wonder behind the scenes how engaged the Flyers remained with Hart after they parted ways. There were some things that were kind of like being murmured for like the last year, and I never reported any of it because I'm not really sure that I like it or that I want to have that conversation. I have to imagine that there was some kind of contact between the team and his agent. I don't know about him with the team directly. Zilla asks, Russ, do you think that right now, Danny, Jonesy, Dan, and Tocchet are having a chat about it? I believe they are. Again, I think they've probably been having this conversation for the better part of a year and a half, and now Tocchet is new to it, but I would imagine they've had the conversation. But if Comcast corporate ultimately says to you, you cannot do this, there's no conversation to be had. Adam Vaccaro says, Hart would need a year in Lehigh Valley. Again, I just don't see that. Dave Wallace says, imagine complaining about our goalie situation, then saying no to getting a bona fide 27-year-old number one, which, again, I don't think he is, but okay. You keep him till Zvragin comes over. I just can't imagine that. Joe Fisher's, I think it's sometime in December. A team could sign him a couple of years ago. The one Leafs signed right before the season cutoff. Yeah, like maybe. Maybe, again, maybe by the winter or by the time the calendar flips to 2026. Maybe. Let's see. Landro says, does Bettman owe an apology considering the disparaging comment he made about innocent guys? I am interested to see like what happens, assuming all the players are acquitted. I will be interested to see what is going to happen. Is there going to be legal action taken by the players, especially the ones that were playing in the league, especially Hart as the most high profile of all of them? Will there be any kind of action taken against the NHL? Andrew Fawcett with a super chat. Thank you, Andrew. Well, the super chat says, Ray Emery had to go to the KHL for lesser reasons. That's true. You would think that as of right now, it's very different, but that is a fair point. Yeah. Going to the KHL, though, feels like I could see. I still think like he'll get a better payday going to the KHL than he would the AHL. I don't know. That idea of like everybody loves a redemption, everybody loves a second chance. Like I don't know if they love it going through the AHL. Mig Yeager, I think it's supposed to be like Mick Jagger, but Mig Yeager says one is innocent until proven guilty and should be treated as such, even in the NHL. Let's see. There was some other stuff over here. There's some back and forth. Olson Math 3141 says Hart would make the Flyers better, and I want them to at least be in the running for McKenna, bottom 10 team. So I don't want him because Olson wants them to be in the bottom and have a shot at McKenna. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think they're going to end up there. Olson says, I know the Flyers won't get McKenna. It is Pittsburgh's birthright. That is true. Okay, let me see if there's anything else to move the conversation forward here or if we are getting to the point where we're getting very, very redundant. I feel like we probably are. T from the TO3 here with a good point. Carter Hart would be an upgrade for the Wild, Utah, Vegas, or Washington. Agreed. There are a lot of teams that are ultimately going to be in contention for him. Ryan Reese says, no money for Hart. Don't want him back anyway. Guy's a creep. There's your conflicting viewpoint. This is, like I said, at the top of the show, you're going to have people that are going to say, yes, I want him back. People say, no, I don't want him back. We ran the poll. What was it? 128 people voted. About 70% said yes, want him back. 30% said no. None of it's too surprising to me. We've seen both viewpoints in the comment section today. Gritty says, sign him in case Ersson gets hurt. Then what do? You can't juggle three goalies again. Are you going to take Dan Vladar, who you just signed, and send him to the AHL too? There are too many goalies. This is the big problem the Flyers have right now. Like when I said earlier, the Flyers have a lot of goalies, and none of them are particularly good. Ersson is going to be the only lock at the NHL level. Vladar, you would think, is probably damn near close to a lock at the NHL level. They're going to try to have Kolosov play in the AHL, I guess. Fedotov is going to probably play in the AHL, I guess. Bjarnason is right there, and he probably should be the one who starts, who is like the season starter with the Phantoms, and then maybe Fedotov backs him up. But then where does Kolosov go? And if you bring Hart back, like who goes? And who has value? No teams are going to want to sign Fedotov or Kolosov. Nobody's going to want to trade for them. Landros here with a good point. I think signing Vladar closed the door on Hart. They probably knew, like everybody else, today was coming. That's kind of where I land. They could have tried to sell you on the idea that, like, hey, listen, we think that Carson Bjarnason has a better shot of making the NHL team than Kolosov or Fedotov. Those guys are going to go down and battle for time in the AHL. And then, Hart's back on the radar, and you sign him, and now it's him and Ersson again. But I don't know. Kevin here with a good point. You're all assuming Hart just puts the skates back on, and year one Carter Hart with a .917 save percentage. Yeah, it's going to take a long time for him to get back into NHL mentality shape. Let's see. All right, we got to Gotta avoid some of these. I don't want to pull some of these up. They might have been in the little comment thread before, but we're not gonna highlight some of them. T from the TO3 says, Russ, if the Flyers make the playoffs, I'll pay you $20 cash during the Snow the Goalie pregame show. I'll take that bet. Flyers make the playoffs this year. You watch. I mentioned before about how I can't imagine being in a situation like that. Jim Cochran says exactly. Maybe raise your kids to have enough respect for women and others to not participate in situations like that, regardless of consent. I probably come down with the same idea. Anthony DeGrazio with a good question. Russ, you know more than us. What was Briere like before he was dropped from the team? A GM is going to be on the side of his player, but do we really know how Briere felt? I don't. I did not have this conversation with Briere before Hart was gone. I have not had a conversation with him about Hart since he's been gone. I can't give you any insight there. No idea. It never really... I also don't think I would have gotten a particularly I wouldn't have gotten a reportable answer, which also wouldn't have helped for the sake of being able to come back out to the fan base and say, this is how Danny Briere feels. So, no, never broached that conversation. I think we kind of danced around it when we had Briere, Jonesy, and Hilferty on Snow the Goalie before last season on the roundtable episode, just about the goalie situation in general. I just have a hard time imagining that these guys want to bring him back. I don't know. Anthony DeGrazio asks, is it weird I feel like Hart has a better chance of being a Flyer in the future than Kolosov? No, you might actually be right about that. I have no idea what's going to happen with Alexei Kolosov this season. I just do not imagine that he wants to go play in the AHL. We had this whole thing last year where they were juggling 3 goalies and he would not, he was not in the AHL. And I think at some point, when Kolosov's career is done or he's done with the NHL, there might be some stuff that comes out that gives a little bit of clarity. The one thing that's always been interesting, and Kolosov has taken a lot of shots from people, but you don't hear guys from the locker room, even on background, say he's a shitty human being. So I don't know. Zilla here with a super chat. Thank you, Zilla. Says Cup Finals prediction: Flyers Vladar versus Oilers Hart. Good God, if that happens! What an absolute mess that would be. I don't even know who comes out on top in that one. I really don't. If Vladar gets you to a Stanley Cup final, he'll be the greatest signing in the history of the Philadelphia Flyers. I don't know. Let's see. There was something else. Hold on. I just lost something that I wanted to have here, and now I'm slightly concerned that I lost it. That's not great. Hold on. Let's see. Where did that go? Huh. All right, I'll have to find it. That was weird. There was a comment that it looked like almost kind of disappeared. Okay. Jim Cochran says, this whole situation speaks to the broader sports culture. These guys are taught as young children. Their athletic ability makes them immune to consequences. There's some fairness to that. Let's see. Raymond Supper over on YouTube says Bob's replacement in Florida and next ex-Flyer to win a cup. That'd be horrible. Bob Stofford says the Oilers have proven they don't really care about taking risks. So I guess we'll see. Joel Nads said the same thing that, has been thrown out there. And again, I said Kevin Weeks for the free agency special over on TSN said Hart to Edmonton as possible. Clever Girl Winery over on YouTube says it's amazing that there was no one in the Carter camp years ago to say, don't do anything stupid. You'll be a number 1 goalie in the NHL and a multimillionaire. No need for a questionable encounter. I would assume that there had to be somebody in his life that said, don't put yourself in that situation. But people get told things all the time of what they should and shouldn't do. And nobody makes all of the right decisions all the time. This is certainly a very bad decision to have been in that situation. Purple Crayon on YouTube says, if the Flyers didn't bring back Vladar, or I guess bring in Vladar, I'd be for it, but the Flyers are certainly moving on. I think so as well. Dean Sarge says, bring him back. We have Tactical Fear 316. with this idea, oh God, please no, not a trio. You can't roll 3 goalies again like last year. Please no, I can't. I don't have the heart for it. I can't. Oh, pun. I do not have the stomach for a 3 goalie rotation. Says Flyers should run a trio of Vladar, Hart, and Ersson until the deadline. Ease Hart back into NHL pace while waiting for the market to open up for a Vladar or Ersson trade. I do not see that happening at all. Let's see. Tony Federici with a pretty bold comparison. Everybody in LA loved Kobe, so yes, I would take Carter back. Woof. I know what you're saying. Ooh. Rick Warren says, we don't know what happened that night. If we don't give Carter a chance to redeem himself, then we're behind in the standings even longer. Give him a chance. Could all get a scam to make me money. I don't know what that means, but okay. Hey, this is fair, I guess, from Bruce Fish. For a city that welcomed Odubel Herrera and Michael Vick, today's viewers are being pretty hypocritical. The Odubel Herrera thing was awful. Awful. Not a fan. Gonna try to forward here. Eric Bretschneider claims the NHL had their own investigation that they said they would release. I think we're still waiting on that one. Rick Warren says, give him a chance to redeem himself. We don't know what happened. Could be completely innocent, and this ruined his life. Max Flaws says, honestly, what's the headache? Some people screaming and crying on Twitter like that nerd Dan Flyer A that always has something to bitch about. Real fans will buy tickets. I will. Max Flaws will buy the tickets. So if you're looking to get rid of them, make sure you get in touch. Let's see. There are some other things. Let's see. Ryan A. disagrees with me. Says Hart stole them a lot of games. Numbers didn't tell the full story. How many games did we watch this year that we begged for a goalie to steal a game? He would have been better than Kolosov and Fedotov. I'll give you that. Let's see. Eric Bretschneider goes even harder into this idea. Says Flyers should have a private jet ready for him to bring him straight from the courthouse to Voorhees. Imagine the optics of that. Tactical says Flyers 110% need to argue for his rights. Hart is a top 10 goalie on a competent team. His 906 with the team in front of him isn't telling of the effort you saw every night and his calm demeanor in net. Chris Fiore with the thought he should talk to youth sports about making good decisions. Teenagers, not really young kids. I could get behind that. So somebody said earlier about like, oh, what if he does work with like, you know, like abused women groups to like try to redeem himself? I don't see that. Could I see a scenario where like maybe he does work with some of like the youth hockey programs, not like super, like the point here, not super little kids, but like teenagers, about the importance of like not putting yourself in a bad situation, not being in bad situations. I think that's probably fair. Let's see. I keep seeing a message that I missed Fawcett's super chat. I don't think I did. I think I got it. If I missed another one, then that's my fault. You have to let me know. I keep seeing Ford shouting it out, but I don't remember what time that was at, and I'm still really far behind on these comments. Ryan A. says, I feel like a lot of people's feelings on this are going to blow over in a few weeks or months. There's a possibility. Like I said, fans can be fickle. There are going to be people who are going to be adamantly against signing Hart no matter what, but if he goes out and they win games, a good amount of it's going to blow over. Probably right about it. Whether that's right or wrong is up for you to decide, and if you're paying money to watch the team, you certainly have the right to choose whether or not you support the team or not. Landro says it's official. Hart found not guilty. Let me just double check. That was like 15 minutes ago. Did I miss? Let's see. I do not find the complainant's testimony on this matter to be reliable. I am not satisfied beyond all reasonable doubt about the Crown's evidence on the issue. And for all those reasons, Mr. Foote will be found not guilty. Mr. Formenton not guilty. Hart, not guilty. Yep, there it is. So the judge about Carter Hart said the following. There is no evidence that anyone applied force or physical force to avoid the complainant from leaving the room. As for certain comments, I don't find the testimony were threatening comments to be credible. There was certainly no evidence of violence. As a result, I'm not convinced beyond all reasonable doubt that the interactions between Mr. Hart and the complainant were non-consensual. As such, I find Mr. Hart not guilty. So Hart, I think, was he the first one that was decided to be not guilty? Yeah. So official. Carter Hart, acquitted, not guilty. Hence the point of the show. Yeah, it took us an hour and 40 minutes or so to get to the point where the judge officially said not guilty, but we are here. We are here, friends. We've reached it. There we go. Tony Louis says, the Russ Joy Show is extremely popular today. You'd think Russ is Burt Reynolds or something. It's just the mustache. Eric over on X says, a whole bunch of teenagers had a terrible night of decisions they'll all regret. Add this to the terrible Flyers goalie luck. We will see. I'm looking to see. I think it's all of the players have been found not guilty. Let's see. So that was Hart, Phightin, Foot, Dubé, I think has been found not guilty. I'm looking for the full transcription here from the courtroom. Dubé is not guilty on the charge of SA. So are we down to one? Is there one left? We'll come back around to it. Let's see. There were a couple of other things I think I wanted to try to get to. Tactical Fear says all the haters are going to watch Hart lift multiple cups. It's Bobrovsky 2.0. Star goalie departs and then becomes franchise goalie for another team. We'll see. I'm not convinced of that, but who the hell knows? Allison says, if the Flyers bring him out, I'm done with the Flyers. There's another one. That's another person who, while there have been plenty in the comments that have been like, absolutely bring him back. Here you have Allison saying, do not bring him back under any situation or under any circumstances. Eric Brett Schneider says Hart will be the third goalie and let him work his way back. We'll see. Let's see. Ryan A says, didn't Jason Greger from Daily Faceoff speak with the Oilers management who said they wouldn't sign him? I don't know. Also, I don't know if I would believe anything that was said before this officially came out, before this verdict officially came out. Tim Ward has a comment here that might be a little bit triggering, so we're going to try to be careful here. Said not guilty of the assault, however, participated in a situation with multiple people, question of character. I think that's probably a pretty fair and balanced take in the mind of a lot of people who have been keeping up with the trial, but that's for people to decide. Andrew Fawcett gives my wife the shout out. Nancy Joy's a saint. She is. Thanks for the super chat, Andrew. Greatly appreciated. Let's see. Fawcett says, surprised the poll results weren't closer. I am too. I honestly thought that there was going to be a larger group of people who were going to say, don't bring him back under any circumstances. And it was like 2-1 saying bring him back. So we will see. J Mass over on YouTube says, bring him back ASAP, trade Vladar or Erison. Hey, by the way, as I'm seeing more new people popping into the chat, like the video, share the video, subscribe. Liking the video actually does help the channel a lot. Sharing the video does the same thing, also helps a lot. Greatly appreciate it. We do this show Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Philly sports, national sports, dissect the media that cover them, talk about the radio people, TV people, all kinds of crazy stuff. We usually have a lot of fun. Today is a very serious topic, so we're not quite as jovial and joyful as we usually are, but I think you probably get it. Let's see. Chris Fiore, noting about Andy Reid and Mike Vick. A lot of people said Reid brought in Vick for a second chance because his sons had issues and he wished they could get second chances too. Does Danny do the same thing after his son's issues in the public? I don't know if it's exactly fair to make a comparison to those two things. They're very different situations. Again, I think ultimately it's going to come down to Comcast corporate and whether they're comfortable with it or not. I think that there are probably people in the Flyers organization that say, yes, bring him back. No, don't bring him back. We still don't even know what Hart wants to do. There have been some murmurs that he might want to come back to Philadelphia. I can't imagine why he would. Again, I think most Canadian teams, except for Edmonton, are probably out. We will find out. Ford says, this might be the most robust chat session that I've seen, and I've been with the show from the beginning. Correct. I kind of figured that this was going to be a show that people were going to have official thoughts. Let's see. Bud Buonato, kind of checking in. All right, I'm almost caught up with the chats, which is good. Thank goodness. Andrew Fawcett says, maybe an unpopular opinion, but the Crown in Canada owes this woman for forcing this. The case was dropped when it first came up, and they forced it to be reopened. I don't know the order of operations here and whether or not she was like coerced into pursuing this case, right? I think anybody who feels like there has been something done against them and wants to pursue justice certainly has the right to do it and should do it. And the people who are found guilty should face justice, and the people who are found innocent or are acquitted should get whatever comes with being acquitted. There have been some very heated back and forths about this. There have been some very heated opinions on this stream, previous videos, previous episodes of this show and other shows. This judge believes that the ruling that she has given is fair and is justice. Make of it what you will. Poonugs is here. Says, yo, so what now? I don't know. Michael Cohen is here. I don't know if it's that Michael Cohen, but says, I knew it. Just watched and cheered on. So Michael Cohen apparently would like to have Carter Hart back on his team. J-Mass says, it's official. Hart is innocent. He was the only guy who went on the stand and defended himself. Can the kid get on with his life now? I will say that of all the things that happened in the trial, I found it the most notable that Hart was the only guy of the five that took the stand. You would assume that a lot of the counsels, right, a lot of the lawyers talked through the pros and cons of taking the stand. It was interesting that Hart took the stand. Regardless of how you feel about that night and about the allegations and what was true and what wasn't and all that, I don't know. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else that came out of the courtroom in the last few minutes since we last checked in. Michael McLeod was found not guilty of the charge of assault. Still have the party to an offense charge to address and deal with, though. All right, I think we're getting close to getting a ruling for McLeod for the other one. Lawrence Fine asks, is not guilty considered innocent? Define innocent, right? Like this again comes back to there were things that players admitted to that they were part of that they claimed were consensual and things that were deemed as not consensual. So I can't go all the way like what exactly does innocent mean? What was I don't know. I would say that from like a morality standpoint, you'd say that they're probably not the same thing. But I don't know. Jay Grebby said I'd be surprised if Hart was brought back by the Flyers. Joe Fisher says the Flyers cap hit to Puckpedia is $97.27 million. If he comes back, some other player has to go, and time to wait to see what the NHL says and when they say it. I see people, by the way, going back and forth about like the ruling here. Be nice to each other in the chat. I don't want to have to shut the chat down. That would be kind of sad. Let's see. Jay Grubby asks, weren't the Ducks interested in Ersson a couple of years ago? There were teams that were definitely interested in Hart. I would assume that there have been teams that have checked in on Ersson over the last 2 years. I don't necessarily think anybody's going to go out of their way to bring in either of these guys. The the heart of it all, again, it comes back to like a PR thing. Do you feel like your team can stand up to it? Do you think your team can face the backlash? And is the player going to be good enough to offset the bad PR? Ersson, I just don't know. Like, why are the Flyers? Like, would the Flyers make a move? I'm not sure. Zilla says, got to get some sleep for work. Everyone have a good night. Be safe. Russ, thank you for the show as always. I hope to catch Snow the Goalie later. If not, I'll listen at work if it's slow. Be well, all. Thanks for being here, Zilla. Jamie Rollo with the same kind of point that we've had a few times now. I'm just looking at how much time we've been on the air. Holy crap. Says, I think given the circumstances, the NHL should give the Flyers a 2-week period where Hart can be their restricted free agent and decide how they want to proceed. I agree, and I think that they should be able to trade the negotiating rights if they don't want to bring him back. I fully agree with that, 100%. Let's see. Ammo 23 about the 5 players says their careers are tainted no matter what. It's always going to be like, no matter what, this will be one of the things that follows each and every one of these guys. So that's where you come back to like guilty, innocent, acquitted, found guilty, whatever. This is going to follow those guys around. There's no doubt. Jay Grabby says, just wanted to say, Russ, you're doing a great job moderating this without injecting any bias or opinions. This is a very difficult topic to talk and report on. Thank you. Trying. We're trying. And Andrew Jacobson here says what I just said. Said it at the time of the charges. No matter what, the stigma will always be with him, right or wrong. That is true. Tactical asks, if all the players hit unrestricted free agency and Hart departs, what are your thoughts on bringing in Foot or McLeod? I wouldn't bring any of the guys in. I wouldn't. I don't think any of them are game changers enough to make your team significantly good enough or better to offset the bad PR hit. I would not bring any of the other 4. Could I make a hockey case for Hart coming back? Yeah, he's better than some of your other internal options. Would I say it's worth the PR hit? Probably not, but it's not my call to make. If you're asking me heads up, like just straight up, is Hart a better player than Vladar? Yeah, if he can get back into hockey shape. Do I look at everything in a vacuum like that? I do not. So I don't know. Flyers are going to have to make a call. Comcast Corporate's going to have to make a call and ultimately decide things. Let's see. McLeod or whatever the hell, found guilty on, or not guilty on both counts. So they are all acquitted. All of them. All accusations have been tossed out. All charges have been tossed. Poonugs says, problem is, when was the last time Hart played? Even bigger problem, I think, is that organizations will be split on if they should sign these players. All of it's true. His last game was January 20th of 2024. So, again, even if he comes back in time for the start of the season or whatever, you're talking about a guy who hasn't played in almost 2 years. Chris Fiore here with a good point. 138 watching on the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel. Only 55 likes. I agree. What are we doing here? What are we doing? Hit the like button. Thank you. Michael Cohen says Hart wasn't on the Epstein list. That is also true. Eric Brett Schneider with a question. Does Hockey Canada go after her for the money they paid her? I don't know how they could. Not sure. I think we're pretty much at the end of the comments here, I think. I agree with this one. JH says it's unfortunate people can't have a civil discussion about it without being rude and insulting. I've seen some not nice things back and forth. I'm not shutting down the chat, but I'm a little bit disappointed. Although some of the people who are engaging in it aren't usually people who are in the comments all the time, so I don't know what to make of it. Casual Warzone guy with a point about Ersson. Ersson being part of 2 years of some of the worst goaltending in the league shouldn't get much interest. We keep holding out hope he's something, but the evidence points that he's just mid to bad. I think he's probably a decent goalie. I don't think he's great. I think any hope of him being, a true number 1 goalie, pretty much gone. I think the idea of seeing a scenario where Sam Ersson is a number 1 goalie in this league is effectively over. Peter Tom Willis must be looking over at the Twitter numbers, where we've now crossed over 1,800 viewers over on Twitter. I think we're sitting in around 155 across 2 YouTube channels right now, so that's fun. Wolf's Jetta 12 says the point about Vic was so good, show remorse, and as is sports, play well, and most people will forget. I think that's probably true. BP asks, Russ, why aren't you giving your opinion on Hart? I don't know what kind of opinion you want me to give. I guess I don't think it's worth it. If you're the Flyers, I don't think bringing Carter Hart back is worth it. But I would make as much of a case of the on-ice product as anything else. He is going to be 20. He's going to be 27 when the season starts. He probably has 4 or 5 years of prime left. I don't think he steps back into the league right now and looks like a bona fide number one. I did not believe when he was playing for the Flyers that he was a top 10 goalie in the league. That doesn't mean that he couldn't develop into one. I just didn't see it. And I know that the team in front of him wasn't great. I was never like this gigantic fan of Carter Hart as being like the franchise netminder. You add this into it, and you add the PR, the cloud around it. I just look at his own testimony of like what happened in that moment, and I go, I don't love that. Even his testimony that the judge found to be like, credible and everything. I look at the testimony there and I go, I'm not sure that I would want to have that guy and that testimony out there. I don't know that I would want that guy to be on my team. It doesn't mean that there aren't guys who are on this team or other teams that have done or said worse things than what Hart even admitted to saying in the testimony. I wouldn't feel great about that guy being on my team and having like little kids looking up to him. I found it gross. I think that the testimony that he even gave just kind of felt gross to me. So I add all those things up and I go, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for the Flyers to bring him back. If they do, they do. If another team signs him, they sign him. I'm not sure that it's worth it. But he's been acquitted, so somebody will sign him. I don't know. Robert Behrman says winning is all that matters. If Hart has better options or is better than other options, what's the problem? Somebody will bring him. Let's see. Lawrence Fine says it's not worth the trouble. Get something for him. That's why I come back to, if you have a 2-week window, which the Flyers should demand, they should be able to trade his negotiating rights like they would be able to for a restricted free agent. I do believe that. Now, will the Flyers push the league on it? Maybe not, but I do think they should be able to now, and we'll see. Max says, Russ, I respect your take because it's based on on-ice product. I just disagree with it because I think Hart is legit. That's fair. I don't see it. I could be wrong. He might end up being really good. I don't know. C-Mac claims that he's got all of Schuylkill County watching. Thanks, C-Mac. What's up, fellow Skooks? How we doing out there? Andrew Joseph says, it's a shame we turned our back on him. I don't know who we is. And I said before, like, the Flyers didn't exactly, like, excoriate him on the way out. So I don't think they did anything that's, like, horrific or, like, burned a bridge with him. But I don't know. Lawrence says, perception is reality. Get what you can for him and move on. Allison agrees with me as well. Let's see. Let's see. Ryan A, with an interesting point here with, like, I guess adding in the Ryan Hansen thing. They might not want to cause a stink because of that lingering situation potentially affecting next year's cap space. I don't know about that. Maybe. Purple Crayon with a question and a point. Even if they were able to gain those rights to be able to trade, it's not like his value is high. What would you realistically get back? I think getting anything back is probably better than getting nothing, right? Like, if you were to get a compensatory pick back, like say you could somehow finagle like a 4th-round pick out of a team to get his exclusive negotiating rights. All right, cool. It's a lottery ticket. Who the hell knows? Not going to get like a 1st or 2nd round pick. Probably won't even get a 3rd. If it becomes known that the Flyers have his negotiating rights, I would think that there'd be 2 or 3 teams at least that would try to get those. Maybe you start a mini bidding war. 4th-round pick is about as good as it's going to get. Can you get a 4th round or a 5th round pick and a potential prospect that is like a change of scenery guy? Maybe. I'd still take all of that. It's still better than nothing. You have nothing here. Here's the real, if you want to know from a hockey perspective, we have to be very careful here in setting the stage here. From a hockey perspective, the Flyers got really screwed with how all of this is unfolded because they will likely not get an exclusive negotiating window. They likely will not be able to get anything back in a trade. There are teams that were certainly interested in trading for Carter Hart prior to him being accused of these things and having to go away from the team. There were teams that were lining up with potential offers. We had even reported over on Snow the Goalie that there were teams that had almost kind of given the Flyers like contingent offers if he is found not guilty, or if these accusations don't come to pass, or if there's no court case. This is what teams would be willing to offer. So to that end, the Flyers, from a hockey perspective, which I know it's hard to look at it like this, but from a hockey perspective, the Flyers got really screwed. They didn't get the high-end assets that they could have gotten for him in a trade. They're probably not going to end up with an exclusive negotiating window. Again, I get it. It's impossible for a lot of people, and I'm not even saying it's a great thought experiment here, but like the Flyers really did end up like getting punished for a situation that they were not part of. I don't know how you reconcile that, but it is true. Let's see. JH says the only way I'd be happy is if they signed him is if it was packaged in a trade for McDavid. I think we can all agree with that. Let's see. Lawrence says exactly get something. AJ goes, can video guy Amadeo put together a supercut of all of Russ's clicking noises while thinking? I want to know if they make a song. That'd be even better. Pickles McNichols. That's a great name. Pickles McNichols. Wonders aloud if the kid was staying in shape and anticipating coming back. I said throughout the show, we've now gone past 2 hours. I don't know how this happened. I think there's a good chance he tried staying in shape. Don't know what that means. Votograph. Rangers. Thinking out loud. Carter, you there, bro? We'll see. And AJ goes, LOL, why would the Rangers be interested in Hart? Okay. I think that's probably a good place to wrap. I think we had a lot of people checking in. We're about to cross over 1,900 people watching on Twitter, which is a lot more than I expected to have today. So thank you. An impromptu bonus episode of the show. And for all the people who joined over on YouTube and on Facebook, thank you to all of you as well. Hey, do me a favor. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe over on the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel. It really does help. I think we're getting close. I think we're like closer than ever to getting to that like 1,500 subscriber mark, which would be kind of cool. So if you haven't done so already, like the video, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. We do this show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on YouTube, X, and Facebook. Typically a lot more lighthearted. Friday's show, we will be significantly more lighthearted, and I'll kind of point people back to this show if they want a full comprehensive breakdown, real-time reaction to the verdict coming out. But listen, ultimately, this is where we have been. We spent 2 hours together trying to figure out what was going on, and ultimately, he has been acquitted along with the other 4 players. Big thank you to everybody who checked in. Again, liking the video, sharing the video, and subscribing really does help the channel, so it would be great if you could do that. And Robert here with a thank you for being honest about how you feel. I give you my honest take. You will very, very rarely find me avoiding giving you my opinion on something. I try to be as honest with you as I can be. So we might not agree, but I will always try to tell you exactly how I feel about a topic. And we'll see what ends up happening. We'll see if the Flyers bring him back. We'll see if another team gets involved. We'll see what the league says. Will they make these guys go through an appeal process? I can't imagine they will, but we'll find out. So in the meantime, I'll be back Friday with an episode of The Russ Joy Show. Until then, this has been The Russ Joy Show. But you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Talk to you Friday. Everybody get some rest. And go check out Snow the Goalie on Thursday night, which apparently is going to happen in a few hours, where we'll be breaking this down, and I'm sure a lot of other things. And we're supposed to have a Flyers prospect on that show as well. And we'll be releasing a new episode of the Dev Camp interview series on Friday. So a lot of hockey talk. I'll be back on Friday here with the Russ Joy Show. Have a great night, everybody. Talk to each and every one of you very soon.